Hello, everyone. Welcome. So my name's Connor Lawler, and I'm the treasurer of Student Council. And I'm happy to introduce Mr. Chic Kelly. He has an amazing speech planned for us today, and he's been kind enough to share it with us. So I ask you to give him your undivided attention. Put your phones away, please. And his talk will be followed by a brief period for questions. So now, a warm welcome for Mr. Kelly.
Thank you very much. I really want to thank you guys for having me out here this morning to talk to you. Connor told me that some of you, that I'm the only thing between you and your next lunch period. So I'm trying to be as captivating and interesting as possible because I know my students, the period before lunch, are not always the happiest, especially when I say that we're going to stay till the end of class to do extra work. So thank you again for having me. This is a picture of me when I was a senior in high school at Malvern Prep, and wanted to start off by telling you how I ended up there. So I played hockey from the time I was 5 years old until the day I got hurt. And when I say I loved playing hockey, eat, sleep, drink, breathe, my dad used to joke, you spend more time on skates than you do in sneakers. Just passionate of my life. And I really thank my parents for financially supporting me through my hockey career because came from a very blue-collar background. And when I was in 8th grade, my parents wanted me to go to a high school where I could play hockey. Obviously, I'm sure you all understand the benefits of participating in school activities and how it makes you such a bigger part of your community. The local Catholic school, grew up in a Catholic family, didn't have a hockey team. And, the archdiocese didn't want me to go somewhere else. So long story short, when I was in 8th grade, there was a kid I played against named Steve Kinsley. He was already a freshman at Malvern. His dad called my dad and said, Mr. Kelly, Chick, you should consider sending Chick to Malvern because they have a hockey team. And my dad said, yeah, as soon as we hit the lottery, we'll be able to afford that. Because there's no way my parents would be able to afford to send me to private school. There was a priest at the time, he ran the school, his name was Father Duffy, and he said, he had a really good way of explaining financial aid. He used to come see these kids and say, look, Malvern Prep gives out financial aid based on need, and we need a running back like your son at this school, right? So it worked out well for me because they gave me this financial aid package that, I couldn't turn down. And it was great for me because it pushed me to be a better student. Academically it was challenging. So I played, in addition to playing ice hockey, I played soccer for 3 years at Malvern. And then when I was a senior, one of my best friends, this guy Fran Hoey, he convinced me to run cross country. I'm going to talk more about Fran in a few moments. That's why I brought it up. But it's kind of thing you go back and look at my athletic career and some of the things. I learned so much about myself running that 1 year cross country. I wasn't the best runner, but I learned about myself. In this next photo here, I have a picture of me. I was on the high school all-star team I was a guy in the middle with the red, white, and blue laces. My friends always used to make fun of me, like, why would you get these with these laces? I'm like, I don't know, they were on sale. I bought red, white, and blue laces. So that's me in the middle. The guy to my right was my line mate for 4 years at Malvern, Ron Christie. So as you can see, hockey was a huge part of my life. Not only did I play for Malvern, I played for a club team. So I played 2 teams. I was on skates literally 7 days a week. Sometimes on weekends I'd play 2 games in the same day, right? So when I was a sophomore at Malvern Prep, I was in Algebra 2 Trig. How many people in here like math? You don't have to lie because I was talking to your principal. He said he's a former math teacher. You don't have to lie. I mean, most students don't like math. So math was something that I grew to appreciate. I really became a math person later on. They had some good teachers in math. But there was a guy in my math class. His name was Dave Chipman. And how do you say this nicely? But Dave was, he was kind of like an outsider. And about 6 weeks into school, the guy I just showed you, my line mate for 4 years, Ron, he said, nobody talks to Dave. He's kind of a loner. We should kind of reach out to this kid. And he probably had this label on him. Maybe he was dork or maybe he was a loser. I said, Ron, you're right. I said, tomorrow, let's have lunch with him. So we sat down at the same table as Dave. The poor guy was eating by himself. I said, Dave, I didn't even know his last name at this point. I just knew his name was Dave. So Dave, Dave Chipman, So that first time, like, oh man, Chipper. I gave him this nickname like right away. And we just started talking and getting to know his interests. And lo and behold, he loves hockey. So I said, Dave, why don't you come to one of our games? And he's like, well, he's came in the hall. I said, look, where do you live? I'll pick you up, right? So this became a ritual, sophomore year, junior year, and senior year, where on my way to the games, I would pick Dave up on the way, right? And whether I had the best game of my life, the worst game of my life, he was so supportive, right? So we developed this amazing friendship over 3 years at Malvern. And when we were seniors, Malvern hosted this really cool thing. It was a senior and a faculty breakfast brunch type thing, and they had some awards and such. And Dave won like 4 or 5 academic awards. He was a great student, right? And like always, I gave him a ride home, and I got home, and his mom was there and his grandmother, and they were so proud of him and his accomplishments and his awards. And I was about to pull out of the driveway, and he goes, can you hold on 1 second? So, he walks his mom and his grandmother to the door, and he said, I got to tell you something. He said, when I was a sophomore and I didn't have any friends, I was going to leave school. And then you reached out to me and you changed my whole world. I'm like, man, Dave, it's kind of emotional, somebody telling you. I said, look, man, I got as much out of this friendship as you did. I said, probably more. You've been my biggest fan in a hockey career. But I think there's an important lesson here, is that we do this all the time, right? I'm sure we do this, unfortunately, unconsciously sometimes, but we label people, right? So what happens is when we label people, we're really limiting ourselves, right? First of all, labeling people's wrong, and then you limit what you see in that person, and you limit the opportunity to get to know somebody for who they really are. All right, so if me and my friend had labeled this guy in high school as the dorky kid, a loser, I mean, what happens here? Maybe the jock, maybe the popular kid. Right? You would have missed out on that opportunity for this amazing friendship. So my senior year at Malvern, I literally applied to 20 different colleges. I was trying to find a combination where I could have good academic school and I could play hockey. And being realistic, I was not a Division I hockey player. As much as I loved it, it was my true passion. I couldn't get enough of the sport. I wasn't good enough to play Division I hockey. In my mind, I just know. So all the schools I applied to were Division II. And there was this guy, Coach McCarthy at Fairfield University in Connecticut. He really liked me. He liked my game. And he's like, look, you come here, freshman year, you'll be second line. You'll play right away. You'll be a huge part of our program. And he was a really good guy, and it was a beautiful school, and it was a great school. Good academics. So I was convinced I was going to Fairfield. Right? I sent them a check, actually. And my parents mailed them a check. Now, Fairfield is an extremely expensive school. So I was going to have to take out a bunch of student loans, and I was going to have to burden my parents with more financial responsibilities to pay for my education. 2 weeks to go at Malvern Prep, guidance counselor comes to me and says, Merrimack College is offering this Augustinian scholarship. They want you to have it. Like, wow, man, free college. I mean, how many people in here wouldn't, go home? Imagine if you go home and tell your mom and dad, hey, don't worry about it. I got college paid for, free college. Now, here's one big problem. Merrimack had a hockey team, but they're Division I school. The year before I went there, they had finished 8th in the country. So this is big-time hockey. So, this is why I had to put on my big boy pants and grow up and say, look, either I go to Fairfield, I follow my passion, something I love, and I take on all these student loans. I, put this bigger burden on my parents. I have an older brother who's already in college, a sister who would be going to college soon, and a younger brother my parents were financially responsible for. Or I sort of do the adult thing and take the scholarship. And my dad's like, who knows? Maybe you could walk onto the hockey team. You never know. Well, my parents were great. They said, look, whatever you want to do, don't base your decision just on the money. I know how much, how this kind of would weigh on you. So, I thought about it. And after a couple of days, I can't turn down free college. I just can't do it. Right? It's free college. So, August 26th, 1988. I go off to Merrimack College, right? Now, I was only there for 11 weeks. When I say it was 11 weeks of heaven, it was the greatest 11 weeks of my life. It's hard to put into words how. It was like one of those fairy tales that somebody wrote for your life. I ended up living in this Georgetown house, this townhouse community with 10 other guys, 10 other great human beings. I developed instant friendships. The 11 of us, we used to go to dinner every night together, right? I ended up meeting this attractive, intelligent, caring woman. I was dating her. She was a junior. I was a freshman. I was mildly impressed with myself, right? So that was going well. And then, in the middle of September, I started the process of trying out for the hockey team. Now, I realized that if I wanted to play Division I hockey, the only way I was going to make this team is if I stood out above everybody else that tried out, right? Which means that I wasn't going to leave anything in the bag. I was going to give 135% every single day. And it started with dry land training. I was so enthusiastic, I think I kind of scared some of the other guys. Like, why is this guy so enthusiastic? We're only doing dry land training, right? 108 guys tried out for this team. We did 1 month of dry land training. Then it all came down the first weekend. You had 2 days of tryouts, 4 hours. So after the first weekend, they cut the team all the way down to 40 guys. So they're going to keep 32 guys. So I was kind of hoping to make the sort of like practice squad. 22 guys, and a lot of these were scholarship guys. And I was really hoping to be one of the guys that just sort of was on the team, the guy who was the rah-rah support. But I've been more than happy to be that guy. So I'm looking around the locker room. I'm thinking, man, what the hell am I doing here? This is crazy. This guy over there, Richie Peon, he's drafted by the St. Louis Blues, and this guy, Chris Kiner, 6'2", 240 pounds. He ended up playing for the Montreal Canadiens. The goalie, Rivnak, he played for the Washington Capitals. I'm like, I'm going to get myself killed out here, right? But I had seen it through that far, and I'm looking around going, it's a numbers game. A lot of things in life are a numbers game. They're going to cut 8 more guys. So I remember walking over the Volpe Center the day that the cut list was going to come out. Walked in there. I waited for a time when nobody was around because I figured, look, if I'm going to start crying after I get cut from this team, I don't want anybody to see me crying. Go in. Lo and behold, my name is on the list. Now, the crazy thing is that kid Steve Kinsley, who I told you his dad called my dad about me going to Malvern, he was a sophomore at Merrimack. He actually played on the team his freshman year, and he got cut. Now, I know, and he knows just to this day, that he had more talent than I did. So a couple days after I got cut, he came to see me in my townhouse, and he says, you know why I got cut? Because I didn't try hard enough. He said, you put every ounce of energy and effort into that, and you deserved it over me. I said, Steve, well, it takes a big person to come admit that. I said, but you're right, I did. I put everything I had into making this team. And to this day, obviously, it was the biggest sports accomplishment of my life was making that team. So I'm living the dream, right? Everything in my life is absolutely, positively, 100% perfect. November 3rd, 1988. Started off like any other day. It was a beautiful fall, autumn day up there in Massachusetts, New England. I remember my roommate, he and I went, he had a car, I didn't have a car. We went and had haircuts. He dropped me off back at school. He was going to work, actually worked a job. He's like, all right, have a good practice, see you later. Go in, get dressed for practice like I always did. We're only about 15 minutes in practice, probably doing a drill I had done literally 100,000 times, probably more than that in my life. I go around center ice, get a pass. You can kind of see on that picture up there where that American flag is in that corner back there, right? So I'm going in on that goal. I get tripped, slide about 8 or 10 feet on the ice, going full tilt, full speed, slam my head into the boards. Instantly, I knew my life had changed. I was 100% sure that I was paralyzed. I remember thinking to myself, probably 25 seconds after I got hurt, I'm never going to walk again. And I remember saying out loud, I can't believe this is happening to Chic Kelly. I was dumbfounded. This can't be happening. I went from everything in my life being 100% perfect, like I couldn't have written a better story, to tragedy in a minute. And I was just to this day, it's crazy. How is this happening to me? So, ambulance shows up. Guys are gently putting me on a stretcher. I'm laying face down. And one of the freakiest things that happened was, as they turned me over, at this point, I couldn't move any part of my body, and I couldn't feel anything except my face and the top of my neck. So my arms are out to my side. As the paramedics are flipping me over, I could see these inanimate objects, and I could no longer feel them, and I could no longer control them. And it was disturbing. So they get me on this stretcher, and they're pushing me towards the exit, out the Zamboni exit. And I say, oh, hold on a second. My friend Dave, my friend Chipper, and I think the paramedics and the athletic trainer thought that I was starting to get a little delusional or starting to be disoriented. I said, look, well, hold on. Look, I know what day it is. I know what time it is. I know who the president is. I know what 5 class I'm taking at Merrimack. I got a 3.8 GPA here at the midterms. I said, everybody stop the stretcher. Like, okay, well, what do you want? I said, my friend from high school, Dave Chipman, the guy I talked about who I got friends with, that he's coming up to visit me tonight. I said, he's going to be on a Greyhound bus. He's going to be at the Boston bus station at 7:30. I said, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it to pick him up because I was going to borrow my friend's car. I said, somebody's got to go get this guy. So now I go from paralyzed person in a stretcher to being like the guy in a police lineup trying to describe somebody. I'm like, this is before cell phones. What does he look like? How tall is he? So I'm trying to give my best description. I said, why don't you guys just get a piece of paper and write his name on it? Like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, right? So I go off to the hospital, emergency room, intensive care. Of course, called my mom and dad, as soon as we got there. But it was going to take my mom and dad like 6-7 hours to get up to Massachusetts. The first person that come to see me in the hospital, my friend Chipper. Now, think about that. All right, we just talked about limits and labels. If I had not reached out to him as a friend, right, he was coming to see me. It's crazy to think about what friendship he would repay me 1,000 times over. So, one of the big questions that went through my head was, why me? So you look at these statistics and say, your chances of sustaining a spinal cord injury are, look at that small number there, 0.0054%. All right, so imagine if we're like, hey, you guys want to play blackjack at lunch today? All right, we'll bet $100, right? And I'll say, you have that much chance of losing. I'll take the other end of that, right? Most of you would take that as odds. I mean, you get a better chance of getting struck by lightning than you do of getting this injury, right? Now, there were some demographics here, there's a little bit more precedence for somebody who's a male between 16 and 25 years old because they typically are very active people. And 8% of spinal cord injuries end up being people with sports injuries. But still, the chances are pretty small, right? So the question is, why me? The answer is, why not me? Now, when I put this presentation together, I didn't forget to put anything on this slide. Why is that slide blank? Why not me? Well, because there's no reason why it shouldn't or couldn't have been me. Right? Tragedy is not something that happens to just your neighbor. Bad things aren't things that just happen to, somebody you knew or somebody you hear on the news. The unfortunate reality of life is that tragedies are things that happen to all of us. And what makes you a better person or makes you really have some type of depth to who you are is how you deal with them. That's what makes you the type of person you are. So, I was in Massachusetts at that hospital, Lawrence General, Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday night, I fly down to Philadelphia, get admitted to Jefferson Hospital. Jefferson was going to do surgery on me the next morning, Tuesday morning. See this up here? It's called a halo. They put 4 bolts into your skull to keep your neck and back stable and straight so that you don't do any further damage to your spinal cord. The stupid doctor up in Massachusetts put the wrong one on my head. So I had to get 4 new bolts put into my head when I got down to from Massachusetts down to Philadelphia. And because he put the wrong one in, I missed surgery. Now, here's where we have to do a little bit of lesson on spinal cord and a little bit of science, right? So where you damage your spinal cord determines what you will be able to move and what you'll be able to feel. So if you think about the way your spinal column works, there's 7 cervical vertebrae, then there's 12 thoracic vertebrae, then there's 5 lumbar vertebrae. So your spinal cord carries the central nervous system messages from your brain to the rest of your body. So the fancy term is sensory and motory function. So I damaged my spinal cord right around the 5th cervical vertebrae. But I damaged it up high enough where I was susceptible to serious respiratory issues. Tuesday afternoon when I was at the hospital at Jefferson, I started having trouble breathing. And I started to tell my mom, "Oh, Mom, I'm really feeling short of breath." My mom's like, "Oh, you're just tired from the trip and stuff." 20 minutes later, I'm like, "Mom, I'm really having trouble breathing." Sure enough, I went into respiratory distress. I had to be put on a respirator, on a ventilator. And that lasted for almost 4 months, right? So things went from bad to really bad. Being paralyzed was going to be tough enough, but I was on this ventilator, and I had to learn how to breathe on my own again. The anxiety and the suffering and the sickness, I got pneumonia, double pneumonia, right? It just seemed like I couldn't get over the hurdle. These were some serious dark days. This was the bottom, the depths of everything is just awful, right? In addition to being on a ventilator, after the surgeries, when the doctors put the halo back on my head, they thought that my neck would heal better if they hyperextended it back a bit, which made it nearly impossible for me to swallow. I ended up losing like 50-some pounds. I'm going to show you a picture in a minute what I looked like a few months after I got hurt. And at this point, my family thought I looked good. I mean, I looked a lot worse at this point. But so this was just the roughest period of time in my life, right? Now, how did I get through this? Well, friends and family, right? Good old Chipper, my friend, he was going to Penn State. He took a Greyhound bus. Speaking of Greyhound bus, I always kid him about the Greyhound bus trips. Every other weekend, 3.5 hours from Penn State all the way to Philly, and he came to visit me, faithfully, right? Now, I remember when I got out of the hospital, I'm like, "Dave, I will never be able to repay you for everything you've done for me. Remember when you told me about, you staying at Malvern because of my friendship? This is like 1,000,000 times over." And then he said something that got me really emotional. He said, "Well, I know you would have done the same thing for me." I was like, man, it's crazy powerful. So, in mid-February, things started to get better, right? Got rid of the respirator, the ventilator. Things started to look up. I came to a very powerful conclusion about my life. Cogito ergo sum, right? Rene Descartes. Although my body got messed up, and 90% of my body I still can't feel, and I have decent movement of my arms and stuff. I still like to work out and stuff all the time. The most important part of all of us is that you can think, that you're a thinking person, right? That's the most important part of who you are. Cogito ergo sum. It's an important lesson that up here matters more than all of your bodily functions together. So with that power in my head, it's like, look, I can go back to school, right? When I graduate school, I can get a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. I figured that out later. But this was an important, life-changing lesson for me. Now, I'll go through a couple pictures here. This is me. Geez. Ooh, that's not a great picture. Me right March 26th of '89, so roughly 4 months after the injury, right? The Flyers had me down to a game. That guy's Brian Pop. He's a Flyers Hall of Fame player, right? He really nice guy. They had me down to this game. And then this guy, the next picture, that's Gene Hart. He was a legendary voice of the Flyers. He did the play-by-play for years. Now, the craziest thing about Gene Hart, he's like, "Hey, man, I know you." I'm like, "Well, I guess, because the Flyers had me down." He goes, "No. Remember you played in that high school hockey game when you were a sophomore that went 8 overtimes?" I was like, "Yeah, how did you know about that?" He's like, Well, I did some research. It's amazing. The guy was an amazing person. So really cool. I got to meet some of these people. About a year after my injury, look a little better here, right? My alma mater was playing in the hockey championship for the Philadelphia area called the Flyers Cup. Now, the ironic thing about this is, and I didn't know this before it happened, but the kid from Malvern who's standing in that picture, right, I'm about to drop the ceremonial puck, he's wearing my old numbers. My sister's like, that's the craziest thing ever, right? You go down there one time. Now, remember I showed you that picture of me running cross country? That guy, Fran's one of my best friends. And when I got hurt, there was a certain group of people that I thought I could count on. People that I thought would be there for me. People that I could, expect to help pick up the pieces of my life when things were really bad. Fran came to see me the first week I was at Jefferson. And then I didn't hear from the guy. November, December, January, February, March, April. Now by May, things in my life were getting pretty good. I was still in the rehab hospital, but I was doing PT and OT every day. My friends would come down, we'd go out to dinner. But I still hadn't heard from Fran. And honestly, I was kind of disappointed. I was actually a little bit angry. One night, my buddy Dan came into the hospital. This guy on the left right there. And he said, hey man, I got to tell you something. I said, okay. He said, there's a reason why Fran has not been in to see you. He said, you know Carrie? So Fran had been dating the same girl since we were freshmen in high school. I said, yeah, sure I know Carrie. He said, well, we don't want to tell you this when you were really sick and you were going through everything you had to deal with, but she passed away. I'm like, what do you mean she passed away? He said, well, she's over visiting Fran one night. This tragic story, and I don't need to go into all the details. She ended up choking to death, and it was like this just crazy tragic accident. Now, I went from like, oh my God, I'm wondering where he is and being judgmental. I realized, he's going through his own living hell. So there's an important message there. We all do this, right? We judge people. You do not know what other people are going through, right? Even if you think you know what other people are going through, you don't know what they're going through. Now, not all the time, obviously, but it's an important idea. Don't judge other people until you know their whole story. Right? I was guilty of it then. I learned my lesson. Don't judge. Now, Fran eventually got his life back together, but he went through his own tragedy and his own recovery. But it's an important life lesson to not to judge others. So, I graduate from St. Joe's. I got this degree. That's where I transferred after I got hurt. I was in a hospital for 8 months, and my brother was a sophomore at St. Joe's, became a junior, so I transferred to St. Joe's in the city. Graduated in '93 with a degree in economics and philosophy. Like any good college graduate, I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I get this job teaching at Malvern Prep. So, like anything else in my life, I'm like, I'm going to work as hard as possible because I want to do a good job. I want people to think I'm an inspiration. I want people to think I'm good at this. I don't want people to think just because I'm in a wheelchair I can't do the job correctly. It's my first job out of school, So I have this idea, I'm going to, just like I tried out for the hockey team, just like I did everything else in my life, I'm going to put every ounce of energy into becoming the best teacher I can. So my younger brother was a senior at Malvern when I was my first year teacher. It was exhausting. He used to throw me in a car on the way home. I'd be asleep the whole way home. We'd get home, he'd throw me in bed, I'd sleep till dinner time. Then my mom would get me up, then I would eat dinner, then I would do 2.5 hours worth of class prep, and then I would go back to bed. And this went on September, October, November, December. And my friends were calling me. I'm a pretty social person. I'm not joking. I didn't go out with any of my friends from Labor Day until the Wednesday before Thanksgiving because I was so tired from teaching. I'm sure some of the teachers here know how exhausting the first year teacher was. Now, there was a certain Thursday night in February, I remember this, where same routine, brother throws me in the car, throws me in bed. I wake up. It's 4 a.m., so I start freaking out. I call my mom in. She's like, what's the matter? I go, what's the matter? I said, I took a nap at 4 p.m. It's 4 a.m. in the morning. I said, what happened to dinner? She said, oh, you were so tired, we let you sleep. I said, yeah, that's all well and good, but I have no class prep done for tomorrow. What am I going to do? So I split a classroom with this woman, this nice woman from the Netherlands, right? Leah Rosalie, Mrs. Rosalie. So I said, Leah, she had first period, I had second period. I said, I have nothing prepared. What do you think I should do? She goes, well, look, you got all those Bibles over there on this shelf. Just get every kid a Bible. Tell them to read through it, pick a story that they like, then come up and explain what happened in the story and what it meant to them. I said, you think that'll work? And she goes, well, you got nothing else. I'm like, that's a good point, right? So I explained the thing to the kids. I had one of the kids write on the board you're going to pick a lesson, yada, 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 just like I explained there. So it's a 45-minute class, right? About 25 minutes into the class, I said, all right, is anybody ready to go? Oh, no, Mr. Kelly, we need more time. I'm like, okay, take your time. Man, it's the greatest class I'm ever teaching, right? About 40 minutes into the class, anybody ready to go? One kid goes, yeah, okay, I'm ready. So he comes up, he does his presentation. It lasted 3 days with these kids doing a presentation, right? So, it's like my best 3 days of teaching my first year. What's the lesson? I was working hard, but I wasn't working smart. You know why? Because I didn't ask for help, right? Instead of asking these experts, these colleagues, the people I always work with, the people I love and respected, I was trying to do it all myself, right? So I should have asked for help. Now, teaching's been one of the greatest things in my life. The kids are great. Here's me one day in a classroom, like Halloween. The kids are, when I was a couple years into my career, a couple kids I taught were on the crew team. They're like, oh, Mr. Kelly, the crew team wants to name a boat after you. Now, not many people that I graduated from college with have a job that's that emotionally and spiritually rewarding as this. So it's been one of the coolest things ever is this idea of teaching. And really, it's been an amazing ride. Now, this is one of the most important lessons that I'm going to tell you. Give back. All right, we all have to give back in some way. So, after I got hurt, I realized I can make a tremendous difference in other people's lives, especially people who have had a spinal cord injury. So, a lot of funny situations, coincidences in my life. After I got hurt, my sister decided she wanted to go to nursing school, and she went to Delaware, and she graduated. She ended up getting hired by this woman who was my nurse on the neurointensive care unit at Jefferson Hospital. So my sister had probably been working for a couple years, and I was down in that area right across the street from Jefferson Hospital, and I was at my yearly checkup for my pulmonary allergy doctor. So I figured I'd stop in and see my sister and this woman, Nora, who's just an inspirational person, my nurse. And they said, hey, man, there's a guy who just got hurt. His name's Chris Heinel. Would you talk to his parents? I said, yeah, sure. Talked to his parents for about an hour and a half that day. About 2 hours later, I get a phone call from this guy. He's the headmaster at the Hun School where this kid Chris had been going to school, and said, hey, will you come up and give a talk? Tell the kids about, like what you went through, what Chris will went through. I'm like, sure, no problem. I'd be happy to do that. So I'm like, yeah, this is perfect. I'll give the talk on a Friday in May. I can take off from work. I'll go down to shore right afterwards, right? So the night before, my mom says, do you need me to type you up anything for this talk? I'm like, no, that's all right, Mom. She goes, well, what are you going to talk about? I'm like, I'll figure it out. So next morning, nurse comes, gets me up, throws me in the car for my mom. I fall asleep on the way up to this drive, all the way up there. And my mom's like waking me up. I'm like, we're going to be there in 10 minutes. What are you going to talk about when you get there? I said, Mom, it'll be fine. Relax. And she goes, yeah, but have you thought about it? I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out, Mom. So then sort of like this, like a whole big school, she wheels me out into this giant auditorium. And then I go out there and I talk for about 45 minutes about how I got hurt and what Chris is going through. And then I answered questions and all these kids clap. And my mom comes out and she's like, I hate you. She's like, I can't believe you don't have to do any prep. I'm like, Mom, I'm just telling these people what happened in my life. It's not like I'm going to forget what happened, right? So it's so important to give back. And it was really cool to be asked to go do that. But I've had even more important stories. When I taught these 3 kids at Malvern, these brothers, Mark Parsons, Matt Parsons, and the younger one, Leo Parsons. And there was one year where I didn't have any Parsons. And I had befriended their mom, Mary Ann Parsons, a great woman, cancer survivor, really cool person. And Mary Ann Parsons makes a parent-teacher conference with me. So I called her. I have her cell phone number. I go, hey, Mary Ann, you know I'm not teaching any of your kids this year. You made a parent-teacher conference to come see me. And she goes, yeah, I have to talk to you about something. I said, okay. What is it? She goes, well, if you mind, I could, tell you in person. I'm like, yeah, no problem. So she comes and says, did you hear the story about Eddie Lancaster? So there was this story could literally take an hour and a half, so I'm going to try and go through this as quick as possible. A kid at Malvern was out to breakfast with his 3 friends, and they had a car accident, and one of the kids in the car sustained a spinal cord injury. Now, you guys are getting some semblance, some idea of how difficult a spinal cord injury can be just from my anecdotes here, my story. This kid broke his neck up so high that he was going to be on a ventilator for the rest of his life. So I was on there for 4 months, right? And it was, like I told you, it was 4 months of living hell. So this guy damaged his spinal cord up so high that he was never going to get off a ventilator. So Mary Ann said, would you mind going to visit the family? I said, look, I'll be happy to as soon as they want me to come. They said, well, he got hurt about 2 months ago. He'll be home from the hospital in a couple weeks. How about you go then? So Mary Ann Parsons, my mom and I went over there. And it was life-changing. It was getting to know Eddie and getting to know his mom, getting to know his, and realizing, man, I am so lucky that I broke my neck and I damaged my spinal cord just a few millimeters below his injury. And the challenges he had. He literally was like living in a intensive care unit in his room. And Eddie was pretty good. He had his rough days, but generally always had a smile on his face. And what he did was he brought people together. And I got to know so many wonderful people. We'd all come over and hang out with Eddie, and I got to go, take him to baseball games and do a couple other social events with him. And I remember my mom saying, man, I will never, ever, ever complain about anything I ever have to do for you again after witnessing, what his mom and dad have to go through to deal with him. And so, but it was cool to be able to give back and help somebody else. This is a picture of Eddie in one of those really cool RVs. He went out to Cleveland, and about 5 years after, just shy of 5 years after his injury, and he wanted to see if he was eligible to be a candidate for this novel new procedure where they were doing this diaphragmatic stimulator, where there's a possibility where he wouldn't need to be on a ventilator for half the day. And went all the way out to Cleveland. His mom and dad took him out there with one of his nurses. And unfortunately found out that he wasn't a candidate for the procedure. And then he only made it about 7 months, 8 months after that, Eddie passed away. But his mom and dad were so appreciative of me and my mom. And I said, man, Eddie, he gave back more to me than I could have ever given to him. That's a picture of me and Big Ed, his dad. So we're a little bit pressed for time, so I'm going to skip ahead 2 slides. This is something I try to live by every moment of my life, is enjoy every day. Right? You have no idea what's down the road for you, and you have to enjoy the little things. I'm 254 pages into my book. I'm almost finished this darn thing. It's taken me 4 years. I have a whole new respect for people like Dan Brown, Stephen King, John Grisham. I don't know how the heck they wrote so many books. But, I'm just about at the point where I'm going to final edit this thing and publish this book, right? And one of the chapters is called Tea Time. Every day I have a cup of tea. And I wrote a chapter about me and this woman that I worked with for years. Her name was Mary Schreiner. And how she used to get me a cup of tea, and how, I just enjoyed not only the tea, but her company every day, right? So it's really important that we don't take anything for granted, because you really just don't know what's promised you the next day. And let me give you a really good example of this. Obviously, that's me with the St. Joe sweatshirt on, and the guy without the hat in the middle there is my friend Brian. In 2004, the Eagles made the Super Bowl. And all the stars aligned for my life because my older brother Tim, his mother-in-law lived 30 minutes from the stadium in Jacksonville where the game was going to be held, right? And my mom was able to take off work and bring me down there. My friend Brian called me 10 minutes after he got home from the Eagles championship game and said, hey man, I'm thinking about going to the Super Bowl. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely going. There's no if. I said, I got a place for us to stay for free. He's like, what do you mean? I said, you know, Tim's mother-in-law is like, oh, you can't? He goes, yeah, you can stay for me for free. So I went down there. I took off from work on Friday. We had parent-teacher conferences on Monday, so I was lucky enough to just call the parents and tell them they were all great. It was like, oh, have fun at the game, man. So I go down to Jacksonville, Florida, right? My classmate at Malvern, his dad was the GM of the Eagles for years, Jim Murray. So I called Mara and I said, hey, Mara, I need 2 tickets to the game. He's like, well, okay, no problem. So he ended up going to the NFL owners' dinner reception on Friday night. Calls me the next morning and says, Al Davis, the owner of the Oakland Raiders, he got you 2 tickets to the game. So now think about this. I mean, I'm staying for free at my brother's mother-in-law, right? I got 2 tickets to the Super Bowl for free. They were scalping them for like $6,000 outside the stadium, right? And I get to go with my really good friend here, Brian, right? Brian was he's a lifelong friend. His dad and my dad worked together, and we all went on vacations together and stuff, right? We had the greatest weekend of our lives. The only thing that went wrong was we didn't win the darn game. But obviously, we made up for that like last year, right? So that was kind of good, right? So we had the greatest weekend. We had so much fun. Friday night, Saturday, got to take a tour of the TPC golf course. I went downtown Jacksonville. Everything about the weekend was perfect. And one of the guys at work gave me a hard time about taking off on Friday. I said, look, man, this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I never take off. I said, once-in-a-lifetime experience that I could never have this chance again. 8 months later, my friend Brian died in a car accident. So when I tell you to enjoy every day, it's something you really should take to heart. Right? Amazing human being, unselfish, caring, left behind a wife, 2 really cool kids. And, it's a good example of don't take things for granted, enjoy every day. Now, I got a bunch of pictures here. We're running sort of out of time, but there's a really good friend of mine, Pat Devlin. I can tell you 100 stories about him, but he was in my class at St. Joe's. In addition to my day job, I teach at night at St. Joe's. We became lifelong friends. It's a picture of me and him at the Eagles game the day it snowed like crazy. A good weather prediction. They said it was going to snow a ½ inch. We got 8 inches of snow. Right? This is me and my buddy at the World Series. Right, another picture of me at the World Series. This is my house in Avalon. I was lucky enough to buy a house before property values exploded down there. All right, it's brought together a whole bunch of amazing people. That's me at by my favorite place down by the beach. All right, it's a funny story here. That's me with a couple years ago with the eclipse. Right, so we had no eclipse glasses, so I put a post on Facebook. I said, I'm the only idiot that forgot to get solar eclipse glasses. They were selling them for $2. Thankfully, somebody saw my post and brought me over these 20 minutes before the solar eclipse, and like 8 of us shared the glasses. We had such a fun day. Right? Right? There's me and my 2 little nieces, my little heroes. Right? There's me and my goddaughter. Now she's 12. Right? Such a cute kid. Right? There's me and my sister's dog. My favorite place to beach. My buddy, one of my friends made that wheelchair for me so I go on the beach. Now, I had to say something about this picture because, number one, it took me about 3 hours to find this darn picture on Sunday. So I'm like, I'm going to stop and say something about this picture. I got to get this in somehow. But a few years ago, a friend of mine who was coaching the LA Kings sent me a text and he said, hey, man, you want to see the Stanley Cup? I'm going to be in Sea Isle City. I said, yeah, I'll be down the shore in Avalon. Then he sends me a text at 11 o'clock and he says, okay, can you be in Seattle tomorrow morning at 5:45 a.m.? I'm like, 5:45? I'm like, okay, it's a once-in-a-lifetime chance, so got up at 5 o'clock, drove over to Seattle, and that's me and my younger brother with the Stanley Cup. It's a pretty cool thing to get to see the Stanley Cup. All right, look at how cute that is, huh? Even if my speech stunk, it just that my little niece did it, right? There we go. All right, last idea, and now I'll take some questions. So, being a good person is not that hard, right? All you need is this. If you think about everything else I said today, I'm going to summarize in a minute, but if you can go home and look at yourself in the mirror, if you can go home and give yourself an honest assessment of who you are, right? You're not judging people, you're not labeling people, you're trying to do your best, you're giving back, you know how valuable your brain is, right? This is all you need. It's the only tool you'll need for the rest of your life. Now, this is a good one because you'll think about this every time you look in a mirror for the rest of your life. I call it the mirror test. Right? As long as you can look yourself in the mirror and say that you're being the best person you are and that you're doing the best you can with your life, you pass. Right? And it's the easiest, most honest assessment that there is possible. All right, so here's like any good school teacher, we've got to have a summary, right? So here's my summary. Right? Remember, don't label. Labeling people is limiting. Right? Don't judge. Right? Appreciate your brain because cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. All right? The smartest person in the room is a person that knows that they don't have all the answers. Ask for help. If you have the opportunity, give back. Now, I'm going to stop there one more second. This is completely up to you, right? March 17th, we did a fundraiser for a guy who got hurt last July. Now, I'll make sure I'll get you the information on this if you possibly want to do this. This guy dove into a pool. He's 24, 25 years old. All right. Lives with his mom, has very limited resources. So we raised about $6,500 for this guy at a fundraising event on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. All right, talking about giving back. I'll make sure that Connor emails you guys the link. All right, if everybody in this room could give this kid $1, we could give this kid another $1,200. All right, so we're gonna be giving him a check for $6,500 in the near future. All right, this is your chance to, if you want to, give back. I'll make sure that you guys get the link to that. All right, enjoy every day. All right, don't take anything for granted. Enjoy every day, and don't forget about the mirror test. All right, thank you so much for having me, and I definitely have time for some questions.
Let's get another round of applause for Mr. Kelly. And we have time for a few questions. So if you can we turn down the lights a little bit? Just so I can see. If we have time, so make sure you speak up when you ask a question. We have about 5 minutes before you have to go to lunch. So lunch, third block.
Go ahead, white shirt. All right, good question. What's one thing that motivates me to get through the tough days? Well, the one thing I say is that I have not been doing this alone, right? My mom is probably one of the most inspirational human beings on earth. My family, my brothers and sisters. But I'm a huge believer in the fact that we're all going to have tough days. I mean, people say like, "Oh, I've never had a bad day," or "Never," it's impossible. But there's so many things that there are to enjoy, right? The thing is, you sort of have to put things in perspective. So, I talk sometimes about having sort of a bank of memories that you have where you think about you put money into a bank so that you can use it later. Have sort of a bank of inspirational, spiritual, enjoyment where you can fall back on that when things aren't the best or when you're having a rough day. So, and I'm just a firm believer that whatever's around the corner is going to be better than this. But it's a good question. Somebody else? Just stand up. You have your hand up there? Yeah, go ahead. It's a really good question. You know, how long do we have? Jeez, Mary, just, all right. So, we're still in contact. We both had our own little paper route, but we did not end up together, but it was kind of unrealistic. I mean, freshman year in college, I mean, a lot of people date people. I will say she's an amazing human being, and things may have worked out differently if, you know, if I hadn't gotten hurt and we had the opportunity to sort of grow in a relationship, but obviously, you know, it was a challenge at the time.